learning and AI, and we're recording this. The topic is very interesting as well. We hear a lot about AI and what you can do with it, but fundamental to the success of that is having good data and being able to leverage that to drive these algorithms. To start off, we assembled a panelist of experts. They will introduce themselves to you in a second. We'll start off with Andreas Wagner, then Qixing Zhang, Gianni Balistreri, and ending with Vlad Tonescu. Andreas, I'll give you the word to start your introduction.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so Andreas, as is already said, I'm doing data-driven e-commerce since now almost 20 years. With a focus on information retrieval, so search, navigation, and recommendation systems. And I'm CTO and co-founder of SearchUp.io. And I'm really eager to talk about how to leverage the data customers or agencies or whoever has can be put into production to create some value.
Hi, my name is Qixing Zhang. I have a lifetime in data already, past 20 years, starting with, strategy consulting when data was really scarce, now all the way up to data in production systems where decisions are taken already for end users. I'm one of the founders of Spark AI. Spark AI is active in search and recommendations, etc. And the core is really flexible algorithms. So we have a lot of experience in leveraging data, but also understanding where the pitfalls are. Gianni?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Gianni. I'm the head of machine learning here at Shopware. I'm a passionate data scientist since 2015. When the boom started. I worked a couple of years as a data science consultant. I support many multinational companies on their AI journey. And I had the opportunity in my previous job to build and manage an AI department from scratch. I was the head of artificial intelligence at Bonial International in Berlin. And yeah, my responsibility at Shopware is more or less the same, build the AI department from scratch and building data-driven products.
Right, and that's Vlad.
Hello all. My name is Vlad Tonescu. I'm from Romania. We're working with Arnia Software, which is a Romanian company. I'm working in the department of AI, mostly with computer vision. And I started as mentioned before, in 2015, when the AI revolution boom was taking place with deep learning. My background is mostly focusing on computer vision projects. So from my perspective, I will be able to answer details about questions related to general machine learning mostly. And I will try to do my best with e-commerce, but this is not my background. So I have to admit that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And maybe to preface this discussion, I would actually ask Gianni to introduce a little bit into the topic, right? Also for Shopware itself as a company, they just set out on their journey of machine learning and AI. What does that entail, and how does data play into that, Gianni?
Yes, of course. So let's start with the relationship between AI and data, which is quite straightforward. You have on the one side a fundamental part, and the other side some kind of symbiotic part. The fundamental part is easy. AI cannot exist without data, so it heavily relies on data. So that's pretty fundamental. And the symbiotic part, AI takes data as an input and generates data as an output. So that's kind of a symbiosis. And therefore, the output can also be used for automatic decisions by another AI system or any expert system, or it can be used for data-driven decisions. So you can, so the cycle starts and never ends, so to speak. And therefore, data has a very dominant, takes a very dominant part in that relationship. And I think at this point, it would be a good idea, since data is so important regarding this topic, to dig a little bit deeper into data and into the strategy behind data. Because for companies like Shopware, for example, when you started, it is a good start to define a strategy, what you want to do with the data, how you can process the data, where you store it, how you check quality, and so on, before you really dig into AI. And therefore, to start the discussion here, my question for this round is, how can AI benefit from a data strategy in an e-commerce scenario?
So let's open that up and see who has any thoughts on that. Andreas, bold enough to take a stab at that?
Well, I can at least try. I mean, yeah, as already been said, data is the foundation for everything that is ML or AI related. And one thing that is for sure is that let's say the ground truth that if you put bullshit in a model, it will also produce bullshit. It still stays true, even though it's sold in a different way now. But you have to be aware what you want to use your model for, and then have a close look at your data. Is it representing the domain or the problem you want to solve? If it does, then go on. If not, you have to invest in data first. Otherwise, yeah, you won't win a lot of added value. At least that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. What do you see, Gio, on your side?
You know, I was contemplating this a little bit. So there's a lot of promise at this moment, right, in AI and what it can do, and we see some amazing applications already. I think the part that we do not see is how much development and training of models is involved prior to that. So there is a reason why billions are being poured into OpenAI, because that's what's going to cost to find, tune, train models that can handle these languages and everything, right? And I think sometimes that's a part that's overlooked, as in, oh, okay, so if the technology is there, then we no longer have to be concerned about the data, which is only true if you train, say, an AI on the public domain and your application is in public domain. But as soon as you try to bring it in to, say, your website, and if your website or web shop is quite specific in terms of what's your target segment, what kind of topics do you talk about, what is logical in that sense, you start to pull away from what the model has been trained to do. So it's a new game, and how good will the old players then perform in that new game? I feel that that's something that e-commerce product owners, etc., may underestimate a bit at times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Vlad, you specialize in visual AI, right? And the product that you work on as well. What do you see there in terms of, for example, working with web shops? Are you able to get the data that you need to start training those models? Is it a curated source, or is there a lot of filtering going on there?
I think it is required in any domain to have the data filtered out and curated before training a machine learning model. It is required to have the data balanced. So you need to have equal amounts of each of the samples that you want to train the model, because otherwise you will have a completely biased output. The machine learning model will tend to output the most frequent value. It is called mode collapse in statistics. So in order to have a successful scenario, you need to have high quality data in every field, and visually the data in computer vision has the advantage that you can see it. It is easy for a person to understand what's inside an image and to get a glimpse of it, even if you sample it randomly from or you get the outliers. You run some filtering with existing machine learning models just to filter out bad samples. And also, what I would like to point out in this is that currently we can generate data nowadays. The trends are that you can also leverage machine learning to generate data. We have a project now that will be starting in which you don't have any data, and we need to create some ground truth, some labeled data, and we can leverage the powerful generative AI to create samples out of nothing. Like you have some layout and you put the machine learning model at work to generate. You give a prompt. Anyone I think heard of ChatGPT, and the AI model will be capable of creating valuable information for you. So that's the other way around. And I think Andrei is here. He joined lately, with a little, and he can take this in a more advanced part, like the e-commerce stuff, if he's allowed. I don't know, but he joined.
Yeah, sorry for being late, guys. Yeah, I'm Andrei. We are developing our own AI-powered visual search solution, specializing in fashion, and we are also offering Magento and Shopware integration for our customers. And for us, it's pretty straightforward. We just get the data from our clients, we analyze it, we index the entire shop, the entire products, and we enhance the search experience of users. And as Vlad mentioned, yeah, it's important to have balanced data on the NLP part, product descriptions and information and stuff like that. It's also important it's hard to get a structured data from all the clients, but with the large language models, I think it's the biggest breakthrough that we are using right now, and it's a lot easier to get the structure from some data, to get some classifiers out of the box, zero-shot classifiers, and so on.
All right, thank you. And I think you call out an interesting point there, right? Extracting the data from clients and maybe the challenges there, especially with an open source system like Shopware that allows for unlimited configuration and adaptation and what have you. Andreas, I know you have quite a bit of experience in this field. What challenges do you run into when extracting the data from Shopware shops?
I mean, this really depends on the quality of integration, let's say which agencies are involved or how mature the customer is. But in general, in most cases, it's like the data has been prepared and used for this online channel only. So to serve the navigation, to serve the faceted search and stuff like that. However, if you want to add more information, like business information, what are return rates, my margin, for example, visits from outside, so add information, then it starts to crumble, because then customers have to go into different systems, try to fetch data, then somebody needs to combine it, but there the most value is, to be honest. I mean, by combining the different data silos, this is where you can really add a lot of value for your shop or for your business. And I think that's the part where most of the let's say, hard work will be in the next couple of years to connect all the dots.
Yeah, that's maybe also a silent thing for Gianni, right? It needs to be easier. And then maybe on connecting some of those other sources, do you look, for example, at Google Analytics to augment some data?
Also, yes. So it will really depend on the use case of the customer and understanding what kind of business someone is running. So for an example, if you're in repeat businesses, say a supermarket or something, the historical orders are probably more valuable. So you have, your customers, and you have orders or things that have been bought together. The quality of the data is typically quite high quality. But if you're in a business like furniture, and you don't have a lot of repeat customers, but who do research a number of times on your site before finally deciding on a purchase, then what you really like to have is, okay, so who's this visitor? What have they been doing in the past couple of weeks? Because the data, there's no valuable data than your orders, and you really have to make use of what is in Google Analytics. And primarily, what you'd like to get from, say, those sessions, which pages, what kind of products, is you look for commonalities. You say, okay, so what is the product category that someone is interested in? What are dimensions, colors, brands that someone is interested in? And start to use those statistics then to project onto, say, the moment that someone is browsing your product catalog or using the search bar, then say, okay, so what are the results that should be lifted based on these statistics?
Yeah, Andreas, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just one really important thing about this analytics data, because everybody was always saying, yeah, with JA, we have analytics data, but since we now know that Google changed, let's say how they proceed with this web analytics thing, it really starts to get a mess. So we have a lot of different customers with different tracking systems. One customer that has 4 different tracking systems, and when you compare the data, you have between 10 to 20% different data in there. Additionally comes everything with the cookie law, the GDPR. It's not just there. You have to really take care of that if you want to use these behavioral signals.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing to have in mind.
I can absolutely support that, Andreas, because what you want to know is, first of all, you want to know what the data represents, and you don't want to leave it to the AI to figure it out, stuff that you already know, because that's just that's not the best way to go about it. Yeah.
So this reminds me of a case a couple of years ago where we had a merchant, we implemented some recommendations, we fed all the data incoming from different suppliers, and I remember that they were expecting to see some results based on a certain t-shirt that they had, right, a brown t-shirt, and they didn't get those results. And in the end, what we found out is that different suppliers had a different term for the color brown, where simply just results wouldn't show up because AI doesn't know that you have 20 different names for brown. So you have to really make sure that you have the representative data and that it's also mapped right. Andreas, can you speak a little bit to that? I think you previously mentioned that you have to make the data speak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the, again, it's a kind of maturity thing, and of course resources as well. But for example, there are a lot of customers that are campaign driven. So for example, every week they produce leaflets sending out to customers, or you can take it from the physical retail store. And one thing we've seen since years is that on these leaflets, products are differently named than in the shop. But you see a lot of traffic, sometimes 80% of the traffic is coming from these leaflets. And if you want to use these kind of, let's say, merchandising tactics, you have to have the same language in the whole process. Otherwise, you will create a lot of friction and you will lose customers. So not just, hey, we need some product data, otherwise we cannot put the product live in the shop. No, there needs to be a use case. So how do I gonna access the data? So how do I drive traffic to the products, and that I align my languages? Otherwise, it's useless. And the same applies to images as well. So if you're using completely different images on these leaflets, which some customers want to scan and then directly go on the product detail page, you again show up sometimes completely different results, confusing the customers. So yeah, this alignment, to be aligned through all of your marketing channels, is really important.
Yeah, that actually leads in a question that I wanted to ask Andre, because images are even more subjective, right? If you have let's say a nice back shot of a t-shirt, that's something completely different from a model in a busy city street wearing that t-shirt, right? So Andre, how do you deal with those kinds of challenges when it comes to the data that you ingest in your platform?
Yeah, good question. So we are trying to train the model with two kinds of data. One is street data, and the other one is shop data. And also we need to have the link between those two different distributions. There are some open available data sets with hard examples, especially for our visual search product, but also we are scraping somehow the social media and other platforms in order to get the perfect shop images of a product, and also the people wearing that product. And yeah, it's kind of difficult to reduce the gap between those two distributions, but we are doing pretty well lately with our in-house data, and we are only using the users' data only to index to create an index for the actual search.
Yeah, and I think to me it comes across as this onus for processing all this data now lays with many of the suppliers of these products, right? But I think, especially in the past, and I think you can speak to this, when these services weren't that common yet, I think it was also to the company itself to kind of bring all the data together, right? What do you see as critical for doing that the right way?
Right way to bring the data together?
Mm-hmm.
Is not to bring the data together. That's the right way. And that sounds a little bit cryptic, but what I mean is that you want to be able to access the data as they are used in the production, in primary systems. Sometimes customers would embark on journeys to move data, to copy it to some centralized location, put in data lake, data warehouse. I don't know what kind of terminology there is. Typically, those can be projects that are, I should say that disappoint. Because it's not necessarily what you seek. What we propose, and I think more and more modern tooling does that, is actually, just being able to connect to those data sources and to say, okay, I'm going to build an index, and when I build an index, I need to be able to add some attributes that come from a different source that are related to an object, to a product that I have here from the PIM. So I need to be able to say, to add the revenue numbers or the sales amount to it, that kind of stuff. And then you can safely leave all the data where it is, and depending on the use case that you have, say, okay, I'm going to connect to a different system, I'm going to suck some data from there. But what you know is that you always try to minimize the needs that you have, rather than trying to build it centrally, and then you have to maximize for all the cases that are potentially there, right? So we're very much on the track of data minimization, not copying data, and per use case, just connecting to the data that you need.
Yeah. So I think many of us here build web shops, but also application landscapes for a living, right? Shopware, maybe a PIM system behind it. Could you speak towards a little bit of a strategy that we should be following in our project, building on that team?
Oh, that may be more Johnny, who's really expert in this.
It depends what you mean with this, with strategy behind this.
I think maybe some common things to keep in mind when starting to set up these different applications.
Yes, as I mentioned before, it is important to know what you want to achieve with the data. And once you defined it, you can define also how to put this together and how you build your infrastructure based on these applications. And could be a scenario that you put everything together, could be something that you want to disconnect it and build your own infrastructure for each application. So it definitely depends on what do you want to achieve with this. At Shopware, for example, we have also different kind of data that we can use. User journey data, for example, from those shops, backend data from those shops, and how the merchants interact with the product itself. And therefore, we decide, okay, we want to focus on some kind of understanding how our user works and what the interests are, and what drives the user, the end customer. We want to focus more on the user journey when we have some use cases about how we can further optimize our features, and then we analyze the usage of the merchants. So that's highly dependent on what you want to achieve.
And would you, Johnny, have APIs available and the query language, just to make sure that you only retrieve that data that is critical for that use case?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you keep it light-footed, right? All of it.
Yes, definitely. Yes. You can also make some experiments, maybe to enrich that data, but in the end, you should only use that data that is really critical to your business, right? It saves a lot of money in processing. It's also GDPR compliant, so you have to. The strategy of minimizing is definitely crucial here.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing here is having a lot of data isn't enough. You actually have to have an understanding where you want to go to, form a vision, and then find the data to support it. Andreas.
Yeah, maybe one thing that I completely agree with what just mentioned. I don't think you can just put it in one place and have this golden record. But on the other hand, I have to say one big problem is still that nobody really gives enough value to the data quality. So 10 years ago, there were the PIMs have started and everybody thought, yeah, now the product data problem is solved. No, it's not. And it's not a technical thing. It's just that different people with different goals in the company fill these masks and fill in the product data, and it's not connected, for example, with the e-com team. So there needs to be on a let's say general level or decision-making level needs to be some knowledge about these are our let's say data points, and at the end of the day, retail is about connecting products with customers. That's it. So there are only two different ways to look at it, and I think everybody needs to be clear on that the cleaner the product or behavioral data or whatever data it is, the better it is. And yes, it takes time, it is consuming, you can automate quite some stuff, but still, if you want to go let's say beyond a certain quality level, there's no way around manual work or different structures or processes. For example, that more people share a common understanding on this is the quality we want to achieve to serve our customers. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be hard, because the best models, they still are around, let's say, 95 or 98%. But when you have customers with millions of products and hundreds of millions of customers and even more queries, still 1% of error margin is huge, has a huge impact on the business. And so therefore, there needs to be some metric for the quality of the data.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say we know where we're going to with AI. We found the data. Gianni, can you tell me a little bit about what goes into the data governance, into cleaning the data, into having that available?
Yeah, sure. Speaking about e-commerce scenario, cleaning data and guarantee some quality and standards. If you use user behavior data, which you track from the online shop, then it is crucial, for example, to refer each session to a specific user using a user ID. And therefore, one strategy could be, or one metric about data quality is how many sessions we have without a user ID, because we cannot use that when we process that into some segments or retargeting and stuff. So that could be one KPI, and therefore we have to, when it comes to data governance, we have to define a policy that ensures that we can refer the user with the user data to a specific quality level, to come up with a strategy how we track the user ID. For example, if it cookie is it enough, or any other maybe some kind of tool or a separate agreement that if the user log in before he clicks through the website, then he will earn some points, and therefore he gets some coupons or something like that. So it's some kind of exchange, giving me your user ID more or less, and you get some kind of a coupon or a voucher or something like that. That could also be a strategy. But yes, to make sure that your quality is at least at some level that you can work with, you have to define some policies that ensure that. And of course, some standards, like processing standards to be GDPR compliant when you stream the data and stuff like that. So that's everything about the governance. And it is important to have some kind of people who care about all those things in the company. So to define some kind of council, data governance council, to have regular meetings and discuss about the quality of the data and how we can improve it. But that includes also, you have some kind of monitoring. So you have to set up monitoring as well to see those KPIs visually, and then you can talk about it. But this is some kind of data governance council is something very rare in companies because it's costly, and it is not directly involved into the business. It's some kind of additional stuff, and people think, yeah, okay, maybe I can save some money and ignore it. But in the end, if you want to improve stuff with your data, then it's simply needed, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. Vlad, how does your team handle, for example, outliers in the data sets that you handle from web shops?
Outliers in our team are being handled by specifically, we train an initial model, and we can take a look at the biggest errors, which is the root cause of the what is causing the error. And if we find outliers, by this means we remove them. Otherwise, we try to augment the data to remove so an outlier will be significant if it's present in a low amount of data, but if you have huge amounts of data, they become less significant. So we try to augment and increase the number of positive examples which are good examples, and mix the data sets. So we have multiple sources of data. Any source of data taken individually will not be complete, will have outliers, will be bad, but taken as a whole, they will be able to produce the desired results. Let's take an example. We want to train now a detector which detects the persons and also their hands. And we have two data sets to accomplish that. We have a general object detection data set, which contains persons, but few hands. So a lot of persons, but the hands are not enough. We don't have enough samples. And we include another data set. And that data set contains hands, but no persons. And we leverage the full potential of the first data set to include to annotate with the person class. And so we annotate the person in the second data set with hands, and then we mix and match together all the data in a unified manner. This is called, I think, it's called large language model in the OpenAI field, and that's how these models were trained on huge amounts of data. So that's why they are so powerful. So a lot of data will improve the outcome of diminishing the impact of outliers.
Right. So what I'm hearing, if I summarize very quickly, is that you need a lot of data to be able to train a model. Is that do I summarize that correctly, Chi?
Yes.
Or is there maybe also a difference between something that's called supervised and unsupervised training?
Yes, it's also a good concept. The self-supervision is something very interesting now. So we can help the network learn by itself by providing it with two examples, which are not, let's say, labeled, but we perform some geometrical transformation, and it is easy to let the network guess where the hand is. You don't know the position of the hand, but if I flip the image, you have to have this agreement. The hand moves to the left. And if the network produces something that in contrast is the same as the forward example, so you have this contrastive learning, that means it is a correct answer. So I think it's called contrastive learning. The idea, the concept of being able to produce mirrored results without knowing the exact answer, but the flipped answer is the same as the unflipped one. So this helps a network learn something without being told explicitly where it is. It is not possible to get some bad results when you flip the image back and forth, because the only point in which the flipped image is the same is the center. So if you have a bird in the center, yeah, it will be able to produce the same results in the flipped and unflipped version. But if you have something in the image which you don't know where it is, you can flip the input and put the network to learn where it is. It will produce some estimations, two estimations, which in the flipped and unflipped version should be equal. And that's how we can leverage self-supervision.
Right. Chi, at Spark AI, how do you approach data sets and the size of that? What approach do you have there?
So yeah, most importantly is that you can produce good statistics. And what is interesting is that indeed we would always look for multiple methods to overlap multiple methods. And because it is true that any data set has unreliable elements, but that's the world we live in, right? I mean, we're living in a world of big data. We cannot and should not expect data quality to be at 100% or even near 100%. It's up to us, the people who understand the data, is to figure out ways to say, well, even if we know that, you know, a particular data set or multiple data sets has weaknesses and flaws, now what can we think of to, you know, in terms of how to overlap or to correlate? So for example, if you're missing some product data, but you know that the products are in the same category, for an example. That's a piece of information to complement the fact, to compensate for the fact that you have some attributes missing or whatsoever. So you have to make use of, say, where you know that information is hidden. For an example, the implicit information that is hidden in that category tree. You have to make use of it, because otherwise all the people that are at the merchant are doing is plugging holes in data all day. That's not a very rewarding job, right? I mean, at that point you start to work for the data rather than that the data works for you. So that's not a good thing. Now, and coming back to your question regarding supervised, unsupervised, how do you deal with the data? So these days, of course, there's a lot of talk about the unsupervised models, and they are great, but they do require a lot of data. They do require a lot of data. They do require a lot of attempts. And I think that it's great if you can do the training offline or make use of a trained model already. But for an example, if you want to apply this on your website and you say, okay, which kind of recommendations do I want to show? I would not recommend an unsupervised model, because then the model trains itself by learning by doing, meaning that you'll have a lot of crap shown to your customers first. That's not a very good idea. So probably better is to say, okay, if we put everyone in the company together and we try to figure out what kind of logic they would apply to get to something that is useful, what we would do is then we would mimic that logic in our algorithms and say, okay, let's deploy this. In the meanwhile, we'll just capture the results from what people click and add and do not click and add, and we'll optimize from there. Yeah, but you try to avoid this kind of cold start problems as much as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. Before we move on to the last question, Andreas, any thought on this subject?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to mention one thing. I mean, you cannot use it everywhere, but for example, what we are trying to do with all of our models is we have some confidence thresholds. So there are some cases where the models are really, really sure, so you can just play them out and the error is really, really small. On the other hand, if you know that the model is sometimes not so confident, what we're always trying to achieve is a situation where we then can interact with the end user. So for example, auto suggestions, a very easy thing. You start typing a query, and while you're typing the query, we can influence the query shown to you, and then you can pick one of them. So if there is one wrong, it's not that problematic because there are others to choose from. And you can apply, in a lot of cases, you can apply these kind of heuristics to learn things the models are not sure about. And this is for us at least the biggest lever, because otherwise you will always come up with new queries you've never seen, new products you've never seen, you haven't had any data. And here you can really iteratively learn and minimize the negative impact. I think this is important. For example, why I think ChatGPT is not only so successful because of the underlying LLM, it's the interaction with the model. If you're not satisfied with the result, you're just rephrasing your prompt. And so it's an ongoing process. And I think this is what makes it so sexy for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. We're coming up on time, so I want to finish up with a quick fire round. We see that the data is very important to drive successful machine learning AI. With this, can you each call out one red flag or maybe green flag when you're selecting a vendor, either for handling data or for an AI product? What is something that really triggers you when you engage with these companies? And I'll start with André.
Could you please repeat the question? I didn't get the
So, knowing that data is so important for AI, what are some of the red flags that you pick up on when you talk to an AI service provider let's say they tell you, oh, we only need 10 products to get our product up and running. Right? What are some of the things that you look out for when selecting AI solutions when it comes to data?
Oh, okay. Actually, we are creating an AI solutions. So
what is your red flag?
So in our case, we are training our models offline or on independent collected data, and we are just analyzing and indexing the client's data. So it should be enough. So our product should work with 10 products and 10,000 or 10 million products, either way, because of our pre-trained models, let's say. Also, we have multimodal models. So we analyze visual, so we extract visual representation and also textual representation, and we are mapping that to the same vectorial space. But in our case, where we are working with media like images, videos, text, and speech, it doesn't matter the quantity of the data. So I don't think this is a red flag for us in our case. But definitely in the other area of products like product recommendations and so on, you need lots of data. So maybe someone with more experience in that part.
Right, thank you.
Should talk about it.
Right, Gianni, when you're selecting your AI vendor, what do you look out for?
If I have the information that that vendor uses that product that they offer themselves, then I think it's a green flag. If Google invented something that they use it, then it's something qualitative and good. If they're not using it, just selling it, then I think it's a red flag.
Right, fair enough. Chi, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I always get a little bit itchy when vendors talk about how their, say, install base, the fact that they serve a lot of customers, for example, that how that would make their models better or anything. Now, I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just saying that if it doesn't also allow for specific retraining for your own shop or site, and that's the moment that I get a little bit itchy, because then it's like, okay, so if this is, one size fits all, then it has to fit you, and that's not always true. And I like the green flag as well. And the green flag is really one when a vendor also publishes about how the technology actually works. Not everybody is keen on doing that, but the ones who do not shy away from where the product's potentially weak. I mean, you're always good in some points, but you cannot be good in every aspect, right? And if you're willing to talk about your technology and also in those terms, I think that's really helpful for merchants to be able to make a good choice.
I think the reality is that a lot of companies are now just leveraging the ChatGPT API, and they might not be happy to share that. Right, Andreas, your red and green flags.
I would say my red flag would be from the business perspective, because I haven't seen one single customer that is exactly the same like another, and you always have to have a way to influence these models or overrule them, because there are business cases where you have to remove products from a certain brand or a specific product, and as soon as the vendor says, no, we are taking care of all of that, it's a black box, you cannot overrule anything, that's a completely red flag for me, at least, and for our customers.
All right, thank you. And Vlad, to finish off, what's your red flag?
Yeah, my red flag is that when we are training a machine learning model, we take a look at the papers with code or some other dashboard with publicly available data sets and published work, which is relevant for the task that we want to solve. And the first thing is that if the data set has a lot of references and it is used in the research industry, in the research field as a benchmark, that's a very reliable data set. If it has, it's a very obscure, it is not that popular, we avoid such a case if we provided we have some better alternative. So in my opinion, reliable data for training a good machine learning model is something that is a well-established benchmark in the field of the machine learning.
Well, there you have it, the surefire guide to selecting vendors.
I'm not sure about commercial data. We mostly use
It's fair enough.
public data sets. These are community-based, and even though they are not as good as, let's say, commercial ones, they have the advantage of being used by many research papers. And when you implement something out of it, you can compare yourself with other solutions. So you know where you stand. If you train some machine learning model, you'll know where you stand compared with the competition, because somebody else trained on the same data and obtained some results.
Thank you very much.
Sell the model or promote it in a more clear way, because you show them the results. Here is the performance on the model on this particular benchmark. It's like, let's say, if you know there are some benchmarks for GPUs or for CPUs for phones. So the data set can act as a benchmark for a machine learning model.
Yeah, so you want to see the proof. That's a good point.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you all for answering my questions, and I want to open it up to the public to see if we have any questions. Please put them in the chat, and we'll be able to post them. So take your moment now and ask your questions. And if not, I guess we have done an excellent job at explaining why data is so crucial for machine learning. And it stays very quiet. I'll give it a few more minutes.
Make us sit here for minutes, are you?
Justin, do you have any excellent questions, please?
I'm sorry, I've been stuck on a train, so I've actually missed out on the talk, but I'm really looking forward to reviewing the video. Been a nightmare, so yeah. I hope it's been a useful session.
I might start with a question, Sander, but
Please.
You all know that I'm a dumb technical person. So for me, it would be interesting to whomever of the experts. So how long does it take that an AI solution is going to be installed into an e-commerce project and then bringing benefits to the customer? So whatever, there are some products out there which look like easy installed in 10 minutes, and one day after I could already work with a product and get results. So how long is it taking to run such a project?
So I think, if I may, it depends, of course. But to me, there are two classes in general. So the one class is where you implement something, and at that moment, still the data needs to be gathered and trained. So automatically, that would mean that it will be weeks or months or even longer before you say, "Oh, okay, I have a reasonably trained model." Now, that can be still a valid trade-off because of the ease of implementation. If you literally don't need to do anything, or just install a little script or something, yeah, you could still opt for that. We, and I think some others, opt for, okay, let's figure out what the data is that's there and how to train the system on it, so that from day one you come out of the gate quite good. Typically, we would say, well, we need a week to set up for one use case, set it up, to train, to figure it out, to have some dialogue about it. So it's not that it doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time, but it will take a large investment in terms of knowledge that is already there at the customer, the availability of people at the customer who have the knowledge to actually invest that in the project, etc. So there's always a trade-off between you either invest upfront or you invest in time after the implementation.
Yeah, I can totally agree on that. And maybe if I can add one more thing, let's say your service is already there, it's super easy to implement. Then at least what we've seen, or what I've seen, is that you still have to go through some gatekeepers. For example, the legal department or the security department of the customer. And depending on how much resources or how willing they are to open up the Pandora's box, it can take days, weeks, months. So in most cases, they are really or often the showstoppers, to be honest.
Yeah, it's indeed a very good question, right? We're looking for a quick return on investment, but at the same time, we should be realistic that you have to invest in quality. Right. I don't have any other questions in the chat, so I think we will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
I have another question towards
okay.
Johnny. So we have the Shopware new feature called AI Pilot, which are 8 features based on AI. So is your job going to extend these features or to make them better or whatever? These are, from my understanding, relatively basic features at all. So are you going to create something new, something bigger, or what's going to happen?
Yes, the second one. Those AI Copilot features are pre-trained models, so they are easy to implement and can be used out of the box. My job is to implement and train our own models to publish AI-driven features in Shopware. So the AI Copilot is just a support when you set something up. And my job is to build machine learning features that we can offer our customers. So that's two different perspectives. In the long run, I also will cover the AI Copilot stuff because right now I'm part of the service lane, and in the future we will have some kind of own data and ML vertical, and therefore I'm not only responsible for the product services, but also for machine learning and AI to drive that within the whole company.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no questions from the audience, I have a question actually to the audience. So we've been discussing now various dilemmas around data and AI and application of it. I would just like to ask the people by show of hand, the topics that we discussed today, is that something that is already urgently felt in the business, or is this just, something that could come down the road at some point, but yeah, interesting, but not directly applicable to the business needs today? So everyone who says no, say within 6 months, we'll be working on this because it is something that we need to resolve urgently. Who are those? Could you raise your hand via the raise your hand function?
I'm not seeing too many hands yet. Thomas is definitely out, it seems.
I'm not seeing any hands. Now, it could be that nobody can raise a hand. That's also possible, but otherwise it would suggest that it's the experts who are primarily concerned about this. Oh, Steve Kramer has a thumb down.
Steve, can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, it's It's thumbs down, I think, for us at least. I know customers who are talking about this topic, and maybe we will play a little bit around with it, but there is no real use case at the moment for us or the customers they can really use it, because it's not too reliable. The reliability of all that is very important.
Yeah, we don't quite understand yet how reliable is what. What does a bracket, a number, for example, confidence interval mean for the kind of use cases? Should I be applying this at all if it's not always 100%? Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I think Victor mentioned it's a nice to have. Victor, do you want to expand on that, or does that sum it up all?
Oh, I just wanted to answer to Chi Xing's question about raising the hand, why I didn't, because now it's not, it's just a nice to have now, the neural networks, the AI, everything. The solution is good, but we cannot implement it right now. So it would be nice to have, but it's not necessary now at the moment.
Yeah, it might be a bit too abstract, maybe. Yes, I can imagine. Yeah,
and difficult to start, so where is the starting point? If I have a data, which model do I pick? So that's like a big problem, I think, for most of the persons who want to use it.
Yeah, good point.
Maybe I can add, it's like in most technology, we are missing the early adopters at the moment. I think the current state is the state where the early adopters should come and show what they can do with that stuff and make us all surprised, and make all the other shop owners to have to adopt in the next step and come and to still be successful in their work, right?
Yeah.
Question to Andreas and the others. Are there any success stories which you might be able to share? So return on investment, whatever, things like that?
Yes,
use cases, etc.
Of course. I mean, it really depends on the business, but once you go through a certain scale, you really have to leverage, let's say, technology that makes things adapt easier, faster, and more accurate. I'm a real fan of, let's say, human control. But as anybody of us should know, I think we can control a certain amount of input, but beyond that, we cannot. And as long as the system really helps you in achieving your business goals, there's a lot of value in it, and there are a lot of business cases and examples where this really makes sense, and all are validated by experiments, tests, whatever. I do agree that if you're just talking about AI or machine learning models, it's a little bit abstract, but a lot of the technology we are currently using is already in production and used by a lot of companies since 10, 15 years, and has a lot of value in it. Just for example, if you look at Netflix, Google, Amazon, whatnot, all of them are using some of these models. I think the thing is, you have to think about, where do I see a gap? And are there any models or tools out there that can help me to close that gap? Because right now is the time with the recession where you really have to be efficient. So if your stock is full, you have high costs, and nobody guarantees you that you will sell it off in the next couple of months. That's why now everybody wants to be a marketplace. But you really have to think of it from a business perspective. And then the AI and ML is just a tool. It's like a hammer. If your problem is a nail, then pick the hammer. If not, do something else.
Yeah, I can't agree more, Andreas. It's a different managerial paradigm, I would say. So, and especially if you don't have this kind of scale, you could still say, oh, I'm going to invest in one more product data manager, right? I'm going to plug the holes, improve things the good old-fashioned way as we know it. So putting your eggs in the AI basket and say, oh, okay, that's the only or probably the most effective way to get rid of old stock, or to make sure that when visitors visit your site and they cannot buy A, then at least they'll buy alternative B, right? That's all that kind of stuff. You as a business manager, you need to be able to stomach some uncertainty, because it is a different it's a different way of doing business. It's not investing in people who have years of experience under the belt with extensive product knowledge. We're talking about statistics and correlations and being able to think very abstractly to get to the best possible models, the elegant models that can absorb a lot of data quality problems. It's a very different way of thinking and very different way of acting, for in particular in the management situation.
Sander, you still own the meeting.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? If not, I think we will wrap it up. And I want to thank the panelists for coming out, answering the questions, sharing their experiences. Very interesting. I want to thank Herbie for kicking off this this meetup. And I want to ask you all to definitely come out to the next meetup. Let us know if we can improve anything. And I'll wish you a good day.